Okay, so I'm trying out new technology. I'm trying to see if I can record a message for you guys instead of typing all the time because typing is just like, oh my gosh, especially after having graded roughly 83 papers, give or take a paper or two. So, hello everybody. This is Professor Broussard is my new last name. It used to be Professor Williams Ferguson, so now it's Professor Broussard. Um, First of all, I want to thank all of you all for your hard work. You did an excellent job at your first attempt at a paper. I want to explain that the first paper served two purposes. I wanted to see what your understanding of an argumentative essay was, which is why I granted you the 100 points just for making sure you got it in on time. Then for those who submitted late, 10 points were deducted. That was the first purpose. It was just to see what your basic understanding was of MLA format, an argumentative essay versus a reflective essay or an expository essay. And then it was also a diagnostic essay to see exactly where you were in terms of your writing ability, what areas I think you needed to work on a little bit more. And it gave me an idea of who really needs feedback the fastest and who can kind of take their 90 or 95 or 92 and be like, okay, you can give me feedback when you give me feedback. So that's kind of where we are. The first 4 weeks has been relatively slow, and it's been pretty slow on purpose. I want you to read. I wanted you to have an opportunity to actually get your resources, get your textbook, understand how Canvas works, be able to navigate your way through the system, be able to locate information, and get in the habit of responding to me or reaching out to me and me responding to you and reaching out to you. So it's kind of suffice to say that the first 4 weeks could be a little misleading if you think that the remaining 12 weeks are going to be this easy, because they're not at all. Okay, so that being said, we are at the end of the 4 weeks and we are ready to move into the fifth week. The first thing you were expecting was a survey. After looking at the essays, I wanted to make sure that you got feedback before you moved on to your revision. A revision without feedback is not going to do any of you any good. So the more I thought about it, and my former students will tell you this, I am notorious for adjusting our agenda to fit the needs of what I see in class. I do not believe in just kind of going with the flow and going with the plan because your needs may not necessarily fit the plan I have in place, which means to me, being the responsible educator, I need to adjust what I plan to do. And that was the case here. After looking at a lot of essays, I was very impressed with very few grammatical errors and not a lot of stuff at all. Little bitty things like maybe too many it's or too many thises, or not a really good thesis statement, a thesis statement that needs to be stronger in terms of opinion. Because remember that when you write a thesis statement, the thesis statement of an argumentative essay needs to be very, very strong in its opinion so that it sparks the reader to want to debate what you put forward. It causes the reader to want to interact with you, to maybe challenge what you've put forward for them to read. So that's the purpose of a really, really good thesis statement. And in a lot of essays, I did not necessarily see that. To be honest with you, maybe 10 essays out of all three classes. There were probably about 10 essays that really, really gave me a very, very strong thesis. Another challenge that I saw was a lot of people are writing a summary of what they read. We really have to get out of that habit. Summary is not what an argumentative essay is. And I'm going to give you an example. Okay, bear with me for a little while. I do hope that I'm not showing my age, and I do hope that most of you all know about Snow White. Okay, if you don't, pause this video, look it up, and do a little bit of research about Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. See what it was about. Pause it, and then come back to it, and then listen. Now, for those of you who don't have to pause it, let's continue. You know the story about Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. And if I summarize that story, I can just say basically that there was once a young lady who was extremely beautiful. However, there was also a witch of the village or forest or whatever you want to call it. And this village, this queen would slash witch wanted to be the prettiest and the fairest woman in the village or the kingdom or the forest, whatever the case is. So in her vanity, every day she would go to the mirror and say, mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the fairest of them all? And the mirror would always tell her why you are. You're absolutely the fairest. Until one day the mirror tells her, well, Snow White kind of got it going on a little bit better than you. All right, so what she decides to do as a result is find this Snow White person and kill Snow White. If that's the only competition she had, go ahead and just, snuff her out and call it a day. Well, it wasn't that easy. So what she does is she turns herself into a little kind of witch type of person, and she poisons these apples. And eventually she does get to Snow White. Snow White does eventually eat the apple. However, before all of that happens, Snow White runs away when she finds out what's going on, and these 7 dwarfs find her, and each 7 dwarf is named for a particular characteristic. Oddly, characteristics that are typically associated with the male gender. I'll say that. And then, don't get mad at me, guys. So then she continues to live with these 7 dwarfs, and they take care of her. They provide for her. They protect her until the witch finds her, and then they can't protect her, and then she falls into this deep sleep because she's eaten this apple that's poisonous. And then Prince Charming comes, and he kisses her, and she wakes up, and she goes off with this Prince Charming, and they live happily ever after. Okay? That's a summary. So after you've read the stories that we had for weeks 1 and week 2, if you did anything like that, you've summarized, you told us exactly what happened in the story, you just kind of repeated or reiterated what you read, you just put it in a condensed form, that's a summary. That's not an argumentative piece. Now, if I were to argue about Snow White, what I would say is Snow White is the typical tale of the blue-collar worker versus the white-collar worker in terms of which one of those workers is more apt to attract and keep a woman. Now, most people are like, that's not what Snow White was about. But it's not about if it is or if it isn't. It's about if I can present a strong argument that that's what it's about. So if my thesis is that Snow White is a typical tale of the blue-collar worker versus the white-collar worker, and which one is more apt to get and keep a woman, then I'm going to look at the characteristics of the blue-collar workers, which were the 7 dwarfs. And I'm going to use textual evidence to support the fact that they were blue-collar workers. They worked in a coal mine. They went to work and they got dirty. They came to work and they were full of soot. They worked underground, blue-collar workers. Now, if I switch to the one who actually saved her, he was kind of a white collar. We didn't know anything about him. He was clean. He comes in on this beautiful horse. He whisks her away. He has these fancy clothes. So we have the characteristics of the white collar worker versus the characteristics of the blue collar worker. And what I would argue is the fact that no matter how hard these blue-collar workers attempted to protect her and attempted to care for her and provided for her, ultimately she runs off with the white-collar worker who she knows absolutely nothing about, who did absolutely nothing for her, just merely the status symbol. The purpose of my paper would be to continue to argue that. And that is what we're shooting for in the next 12 weeks. So that being said, I'm going to open up the announcements page, or I'll probably put this in a discussion forum. I'll put the announcement on the announcements page, but I'm going to open it up for the discussion forum. We had one discussion during weeks 1 and 2. We were supposed to have one during weeks 3 and 4. I wanted us to concentrate more on reflecting back on our experience of writing the essay, getting the feedback, and then reflecting on what could have been done better. And you received feedback in 2 forms. The first form of feedback you received was me announcing on the on Canvas, hey, these are the things I want you to look for. I want you to look at this model paper, and I want you to compare your paper to this model paper and take a look at where you went wrong. The one thing you will never, ever, 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 ever get from me, you will never get answers. I will never give you answers. My job is to teach you how to learn. The best way to teach you how to learn is to teach you how to identify your areas of strength and your areas of weakness, because each one of you is very different. Each one of you has a different learning style. Each one of you has a different motivation for learning the material that you're learning, and each one of you has a different level of interest. So, considering those three things, it's one thing to tell you the answer. That's easy. It's another thing to teach you how to find the answers within yourself, to teach you how to look at your work and critique and analyze your own work and say, oh gosh, I didn't do that one too good. I could have done better with that. So that's what we're going for. So when you give my feedback, I'm not going to point to each specific error. Now, if it's a very significant error and I want you to really pay attention to it, that means that I'm noticing that pattern throughout you writing your paper. So I will point those things out, but I will give you general feedback for you to go into your paper, and I want you to be able to see, oh, okay, this is what she's saying. Oh, okay, I did it right here again. Oh, yeah, I did it right there. That's what we're going for. So right now, I want you to just kind of relax, take a breather, get ready for the next 12 weeks. You'll go to your announcement page Thursday morning, and then you'll go to your discussion Thursday evening. And we will continue to discuss the things that we're seeing in our writing. We'll continue to discuss the things that we're seeing on the announcement boards, and we'll continue to discuss the things that you're seeing as a result of this video. I want you to really engage in the discussion. Even though we are online, we're in completely different places. This is one of the best forms for us to really discuss and debate what we're learning, because you can do it at any time. We're not in the same space. You don't have to come up with something within 1 hour's time. You have time to actually read someone else's comment, read someone else's work, and reflect on it, and then come back and add what you have to say. And I want to see that. I want to see that engagement. Just because we're online does not mean that we have to learn in an isolated manner. Okay? That being said, I hope this works, because if it doesn't, that's like 12 minutes and 30 seconds of me doing something for nothing. Anyway. I'll see you guys next time. Have fun. Bye-bye.